Is it facing you or do you?
All right, we're studying this morning in John chapter 6. We're going to begin in verse 15, and we'll go down through as far as we want to get this morning. And you are joining us with via our YouTube channel. You can like the channel, you can subscribe to the channel, and if it's a blessing to you, share it with somebody so it'll be a blessing to them. All right, John chapter 6. I'm going to read the verses, and then we're going to talk and make some application to our lives. Beginning in verse 15, the scriptures record, when Jesus therefore perceived, remember that they were up on the side of the mountain. Jesus took the little boys' lunch. He broke it. He fed 5,000 people. They observed all of that. And after observing all of that, they made this massive crowd say, hey, this is the prophet. This is the King of Israel. And so that brings us down to verse 15. It says, when Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him king, he departed again into a mountain himself alone. And when even was now come, his disciples went down unto the sea and entered into a ship and went over the sea toward Capernaum. And it was now dark, and Jesus was not come to them. And the sea arose by reason of a great wind that blew, so that so when they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlong, they see Jesus walking on the sea and drawing nigh unto the ship, and they were afraid. But he said unto them, it is I, be not afraid. Let me stop right there. That crowd decided that they were going to, by force, make Jesus king. Now look, Jesus was already king. And he didn't come to overthrow the Roman Empire. He came to overthrow the kingdom of the devil, which he did. They were going to make him the king of a political apparatus in Israel to make Israel an independent nation upon the earth out from under the yoke of the Roman Empire. That's not why Jesus was there. When he perceived in his spirit that was what was happening, he got up and he left the disciples and the crowd, and he went off into another nearby mountain or hill by himself. And he stayed there by himself. Nighttime came. The disciples got up. Jesus is not there. They got up. They went down and got in their boat. They started to cross the sea going to the city of Capernaum. They went about 25 to 30 furlongs, which is about a mile, give or take. That's just a guesstimate right now. And a great wind rose up, and it caused the sea to be unstable. And they were rowing, and get this, you'll see it as I explain it, it's already in the context what I read. They were rowing against the wind. You know, there's a song, a rock and roll song, running against the wind. Every time I hear that song, I think, man, until I met Jesus, that's all I was doing, running against the wind. They were rowing against the wind. And sometime in the middle of the night now, they're out there struggling. Here comes Jesus walking on the water. They see him coming, walking on the water. They're afraid. And Jesus tells them, every time he showed up, he's telling, don't be afraid. He says, don't be afraid, it's me. And as soon as they recognized it was him, they welcomed him into the boat. As soon as he got in the boat, I'm going to read it to you. As soon as he got in the boat. Let me repeat that. As soon as he got in their boat, they were at the shore of the place they had been all night trying to get to, but couldn't get to because they were rowing against the wind. All those struggles, let me make an application here. All those struggles that you and I go through, and we're leaning into the wind and we're trying to, if Jesus gets in the boat with us, you'll end up there. And you may end up there immediately. Let me read that to you. Verse 21. Then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at the land whither they went. They call that thought travel, or, you're here and you're thinking you want to be over there and you're over there. Time and space, which is a created entity, by the way, created by God. God happens to be outside of time and space, but he has come into time and space in Jesus so he could cup our cheeks and tell us he loves us. Because it's a created entity and it's subject to the one who created it, it was no problem for him when he got in the boat to suddenly be where they wanted to go, which was all the way across the lake on the shore. So I'm going to make application here again, and then we're going to read on. Whatever you're doing, if the Lord gets in the boat with you, if the Lord's in the thing, you will arrive where you ought to arrive. You will accomplish what God wants you to accomplish. That may not be measurable by the world's standards, but we don't live by the world's standards. The world lives after what I see, what I feel, what I hear, what I can get my hands on. I get all I can. I put a lid on it and sit on the can. We don't live like that. We give because we've been given to. Remember the passages we've already gone through, that out of your bellies will flow rivers of living water. This spake he of eternal life that's in you. As you give it out, it comes in. It's living water. You can't outgive it. You can't lower the surface 1 inch. You can't give enough away to have nothing. You can't even give enough away in love and expression and help and so on and so forth. You can't give enough away that it's even measurable that you gave anything. They ended up where they were trying to get to all along. They just needed Jesus in the boat with them. All right, then beginning in verse 22, and we're going to read down several passages because these passages we're going to come up on are really where I want to spend some time today. Verse 22 says, the day following, when the people which stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was none other boat there, save the one wherein the disciples were entered, and that Jesus went not with the disciples into the boat, but that the disciples were gone away alone. And I'm going to skip down to verse 24. When the people therefore saw that Jesus was not there, neither his disciples, they also took shipping and came to Capernaum seeking for Jesus. Now let me stop right there. We know there were a minimum of 5,000 men there. We know that Jesus fed them with the boys' lunch. We know that the disciples were examined in that thing. Jesus asked them, how are we going to feed these people? Their answers located them. Told Jesus where they were in their inner man. These events we've already read just took place. Now the disciples and Jesus are over in Capernaum. These people wake up in the morning and looking around. The disciples are gone. Looking, Jesus is not there. So they jump in boats and they row across the lake and they get to Capernaum. Now when they get to Capernaum, in verse 25 says, and when they had found him, they came specifically looking for him. And when they had found him on the other side of the sea, they said unto him, Rabbi, when comest thou hither? When did you come over here? We saw the disciples leave. You weren't with them. How did you get over here? Jesus did not look. The thing about God is that he doesn't answer the question that you ask. He deals with the real condition of the one who's asking the question. Time and time again, you'll see this in the New Testament, in the Gospels, when somebody will ask Jesus something and his answer, he doesn't even respond to that answer. His answer touches them where they are. So when they ask him, how'd you get here? Here's his answer in verse 26. Jesus answered them and said, verily, verily, which is, verity is truth. Truly, truly, verily, verily. Now when God repeats something, you go to the bank on that one. You go to the bank on it if he only says it once. But when he repeats it, it is of paramount importance. Verily, verily. Truly, truly. Pay attention to what I'm getting ready to say. Verily, verily, I say unto you, ye seek me not, because ye saw the miracles. They saw him feed. They ate the food that he generated. They saw it. He said, you're not looking for me because you saw the miracle that I did. Their motivating factor was entirely different. You seek me not because of the miracle that you saw, but because ye did eat of the loaves and were filled. The thing that motivated them was their belly. Now, is that not what motivates mankind? I'll do for you, but what is it going to give me? I'll do this for you, but what am I going to get out of it? I mean, the world operates that way. It just does. Every aspect of human society, no matter what society it is, it operates that way. The salesman goes out to sell. He's really not interested in whether you can use what he sells or not. He's interested in making the sale because he's going to get a bonus off the sale. You find the Lord manifesting in that environment in unique ways. For instance, a heating and air conditioning man will come to your house and change the filters in your house. And when you ask him about how much you owe him, he sticks his hand out and says, it's my gift. That's not how the world operates. But that's how God operates. Like the songwriter said, nothing in my hand do I bring, simply to the cross I cling. God gave Jesus when we had nothing to give him in return. And we still don't have anything to give him in return except our love and our obedience. What is it that we have that he has need of? Nothing. Because he owns everything anyway. He made everything. Then in verse 27, Jesus said, after he said, you're not looking for me because you saw the miracles that I did. You're looking for me because you were hungry, I fed you, and now you're hungry again. You want me to feed you again. That wasn't the purpose of feeding them the first time. The purpose of feeding them the first time was that they might experience and see God in front of them operating, that they might believe and be saved. They missed it. All they were interested in was the bread. And the next verse, verse 27, Jesus said, labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for the meat that endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you. For him hath God the Father sealed. The meat you need to labor for is what I'm going to give you, which is everlasting life. Now, he's not talking about working to obtain it. He is using metaphorical language to help them understand they work every day to earn enough money to buy bread to feed themselves. But tomorrow they're going to be hungry again. And they're going to repeat that thing until they lay down in the grave. Jesus said that stuff perishes. What you need to be interested in is coming to me, because I am the bread of life, Jesus said. What you need to be interested in is coming to me, because when you eat of me, you will never hunger again. Let me tell you something. I got born again almost 50 years ago. I've never hungered for salvation one day since. Jesus is completely, totally satisfying. Does that mean that every believer doesn't struggle with, well, am I saved or am I not saved? Well, let me tell you something. Depending on how old you are in the Lord, I'm not talking about age-wise, I'm talking about maturity. If you're a little kid in the Lord, the devil will beat you up and tell you all kinds of things. And if you don't know how to defend yourself, you're going to struggle. Part of growth is for you to grow up big enough you can punch him in the eye. Metaphorically. The application here is that a man and a woman are to come to Jesus, that they might be saved. He is completely, totally satisfying when it comes to salvation. There is no other means whereby a man may be saved. Acts 2:47 or somewhere in there. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there's none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. John 14:6, Jesus said to them right in their face, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. In John chapter 5, he looked the religious crowd in the face. He said, you've never seen God. You've never heard his voice. You don't know him. Why? Because he was standing in front of them. And they didn't recognize him. He could have just as easily said, here I am and you don't know me. Labor not for that meat that perisheth, but labor. Eat of me, is what he's saying. Everlasting life. In other words, he gives you his own life. Verse 28 then says, now listen. When I was pastoring, I asked the congregation, I said, how many of you want to honor God? Well, they all raised their hand. I want to honor God. I said, okay. Jesus was talking to Peter, and he said, Peter, they're going to crucify you. I'm paraphrasing. They're going to crucify you in order to honor God. Peter, he wasn't too happy about that when you read it in context, but he got, he went on with it, and he did get crucified. They did kill him. Wow. Now, and I've heard, and I have said innumerable times, I want to do the will of God. I mean, in our group here, I've heard you say, well, I want to do the will of God. Well, and then if you ask someone, well, what is the will of God? Well, they'll answer you, well, the will of God for me is this. And somebody will say, well, the will of God for me is this. And somebody else will say, well, the will of God for me is this. And they may be telling you the truth, but they're only telling you the truth as it pertains to the fruit that is born on the tree. The tree is the will of God. The fruit is what that produces in the life of the person. So I'm going to give you the truth. I'm going to give you not me, but the scripture is going to give you the will of God. Plus nothing, minus nothing. In verse 28, they said unto him, what shall we do that we might work the works of God? verse 29, Jesus answered and said unto them, this is the work of God, that ye believe on him whom he hath sent. If you want to do the will of God, you want to do the work of God, believe on Jesus. Now, once you have believed on Jesus, the fruit or the byproduct of your life may vary with an innumerable variation. The fruit of your life may be being a mechanic or being an overseer, being a mother or being a caregiver or being a taxi cab driver or whatever, being an airplane pilot, being a soldier. It may manifest in 10 million different ways. But that's the fruit on the tree. All the fruit does is testify to the root. Is it rooted in me? Jesus. The work of God is to believe on Jesus. You want to do the work of God? Believe on Jesus. Now that may manifest in you running a child's orphanage. That may manifest in you going to the mission field somewhere. That may manifest in you running a garage. That may manifest in you doing a million different things. Which speaks to the diversity and the creativity of God. But it's rooted in Jesus. And then the fruit is who God made you to be, the kind of fruit that you bear. One person has this gift, and one person has that gift, and this person has that gift. Does that make sense? Is that not what the Word says here? Let me read it again. Verse 29. Jesus answered and said unto them, this is the work of God, that you believe on him whom he hath sent. When you believe on Jesus, what you're doing is testifying and acknowledging that God is true, because God said, I have sent my Son. If you receive my Son, you've received me. If you reject my Son, you've rejected me. You know, I have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. If you abuse and reject one of them, you have abused and rejected me. If you bless them and receive them, you've blessed me and received me. And you can do that without me even being present. But I'll hear about it. Now, I guess we'll jump down the next few verses. Here's their response. Remember, I've said this multiple times, that these people were living after their sense life, which is true because they just wanted to be fed. They just wanted to be fed. Here they are. They've seen the miracle of the kids' lunch feeding 5,000 people. Jesus just told them that the work, they asked the question, well, can we we'd like to do the work of God. Well, okay, you want to do the work of God, believe on me. As soon as he said that, look at their response in verse 30. They said therefore unto him, what sign showest thou then, that we may see and believe? What dost thou work? Can you imagine the darkness of their minds? They just saw him the day before. And the scripture doesn't record, but all of those other things he did all the way back to John chapter 1. Some are listed, but most of them aren't listed. They're just inferred. Unbelievable. Because they're processing what they're seeing and hearing through their natural faculties, as opposed to actually exercising faith and believing on Jesus. I talk to people almost every day who live that way, and when you talk to them about Jesus, it's like their eyes glass over. And they just don't hear you. And I talk to people almost on a regular basis that just don't believe. I don't believe. I'm not going to believe. I'm never going to believe. Okay, well, that's on you, you know. But, you know, Jesus said, believe on me. They said, well, show us something. Well, did you forget yesterday? Show us something. And then they appeal. Here it goes. I'm going to go a couple more verses, then we're going to conclude this portion anyway. Remember, I don't know, 2 or 3 studies ago, I said that religious people always appeal to their history. Now, I don't want to make people mad, especially on YouTube, but Lutherans will always appeal to their Lutheran history. They'll appeal back to Martin Luther. Catholics will always appeal back to their popes and their magisterium, what they call magisterium. Different groups of people, they will appeal back. Well, we believed this for 500 years. You can believe a lie for 500 years; it's still a lie. Here they are. They're going to appeal to their history. Verse 31. When Jesus, in this conversation, has given them the word, here in verse 31 they say, our fathers did eat manna in the desert. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. They're appealing back to the Jews who brought out of slavery out of Egypt, and they were in the desert under Moses, and they were hungry, and Moses appealed to God, and God said, tell them in the morning when they get up to go out, and there's going to be light bread on the ground. Tell them to gather up what they need for that day, no more, just that day. And they didn't pay attention. They gathered up all kinds of extra stuff, and it rotted and molded, and the worms were in it, but it's a matter of faith. And they were seeing miracles all over the place, and they still didn't believe God. He said, so these people are appealing to their history. Well, our fathers were in the wilderness, and Moses prayed, and God gave them manna to eat. And Jesus says, that's not the manna that my Father gives. My Father gave that to those people, but you know what? They're all dead. The manna I'm talking about is me, my flesh. I'm giving he was going to go to the cross as a sacrificial lamb. They still couldn't hear him because they thought, how's he going to give us his body to eat? We going to take a bite out of his arm or his leg? Or they were living after their sense life. They were not exercising faith, and therefore they couldn't hear what he was saying. Verse 31, our fathers did eat manna in the desert, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. Then Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he, a person, he which cometh down from heaven and giveth his life unto the world. That's the true bread. Just remember this. It's just Jesus. All you folks watching my YouTube, like, share, and you can email me at vicdeal777 if you want to. God bless you all.